Alrighty, we're going to listen to our favorite TriMet evildoer. His name is Neil Mcfarlane, and he is on OPB. And he's going to tell us how wonderful the Orange Line is, I'm sure. I haven't listened to it yet, but let's listen to it now and hear what he has to say, and I will cut in as needed.
Of TriMet, the Regional Mass Transit Authority. It's been a little more than a year since TriMet expanded the Orange Line to Milwaukee, so we now have the first full year of data. So far, ridership is a little bit below initial estimates. Neil Mcfarlane, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
So as I mentioned, we now have this data. Forecasts had called for about 17,000 average weekday trips this year. It's closer, though, to about 11,000. How do you explain that gulf?
Well, that's a third. That's 30% less than projections. That's considerable. That's a considerable difference. Of course, we know that TriMet has fudged these statistics before, as in the West, which has gone nowhere near the first year projections. It's, West has been going for quite a while now, and it still hasn't made its first year performance. Anyway, let's hear what he has to say.
Well, first of all, I'd say we're very pleased with the response to the Orange Line. If you look at the peak hour travel, the trains are full, standing room only, great crowds at OHSU, at PSU, beginning to use the service. So we see it doing what it was supposed to do in terms of beginning to provide an alternative for commuters. The other thing I'd say is that when we compare October of last year to October of this year, ridership is up 8%. So that number you were referring to is actually now about 12,200. So we're growing.
For that.
Yeah, okay, so here we are. Here we have our TriMet, the usual shtick you get from the TriMet executives. A million excuses, a million justifications. The question I have about it, of course, is, you lied. Okay, you lied about the kind of ridership you would get, and I'm sure they did that so they could get the funding for it. And it's just wrong, just like the West was wrong, and just like the West, it's too late now to say no, it's in.
But that's still about 30% below what was talked about in some federal proposals for funding as the estimate.
And one of the things I think we have to note is that these projects are really built for the long term. And if you begin to look around the response to the Orange Line from the development community, for example, it's been overwhelmingly positive. One little anecdote.
Well, there you go. Any of us that actually follow this material, that tiny clique of people that follow the TriMet news, knows that this was always about development. It was not about ridership. It was also about money. These technocrats are going to get the money any way they can. If there's $1.5 billion to be got, they're going to get it, because that's what they do, and they'll do whatever they have to do to get that money, even if it means lying about it.
It was earlier this summer, Milwaukee was named the 9th hottest zip code in the U.S. in response to the added accessibility that the light rail line brought. And indeed, if you look around South Waterfront, you see 3 blocks under development by OHSU. You know that OMSI has just announced a new development team for their properties.
Well, I'm glad he admits that it's all about developers, not about people. This is important. This is neoliberalism, folks. This is neoliberalism. This is one of the reasons why Trump won, by the way. This is actually an example of it, of the government not serving the needs of the people, but serving the needs of the capitalist class, the people that are connected and that have money. And this is a pretty good example of that. And he's making excuses of how great it's done for the developers. Well, that doesn't help the people that were riding the 33 and now have to transfer.
Begin to see the ripening of this project over time, and that's certainly what we've seen with other light rail lines.
Are you going to be making any tweaks to service to make that happen faster, to increase ridership?
Right now, we're really pleased with the way the service is operating. I actually did a little check.
Oh, that's hilarious. Ever since TriMet put the Orange Line in, the service quality has just nosedived. And those of us that are following, once again, you have to be following it to know it. And people don't follow this material like I do and a few others. But the quality, the rail service has become completely unreliable.
And before this, and we actually were operating 92% on time yesterday. Overall, our system has really improved its performance on-time performance by about 10 points over the last year. So we've seen, I think, an increase in the reliability of the service, and that's really important for our customers. And so that's the main thing, is to really make sure that we're focused on reliability, on-time performance, and safe performance. And so far, the results are really beginning to move uphill on that in terms of improvement.
We got a few voicemails from people about their experiences using the Orange Line or not. I'd like to get your response to one of them.
Sure.
My name is Bill Zenner, and I live in Happy Valley, and I regularly ride the Orange Line whenever there's parking available. I've been extremely frustrated with the lack of available parking, and it's very frustrating. I contacted TriMet about the lack of parking. I was told that it was because they had budget shortfalls, that they weren't able to complete the parking, which I find very frustrating. At anywhere past about 7:15 in the morning, every parking spot is taken, and I find that people that I talk to state that they would definitely ride Max downtown or to other places if there was available parking.
Okay, let's see what he says.
From other people as well, that parking seems to be an issue.
I think, indeed, there is a lot of demand for the park and ride spaces. And actually, over the last month, we've actually expanded the Park Avenue Park and Ride lot. We've got an agreement with adjacent property owner to actually increase the number of spaces, so we're responding to that. I would tell you that we have proposed to the federal government that actually we use some of the savings that came from that project. Remember, that project was completed on time and almost $50 million under budget. So far, the federal government had said, thank you very much, we'd like to have our money back instead. So that's the status that we're at.
Yeah, thank you very much. Give us our money back. And now that Trump is in office, you can forget about having any more money for this light rail stuff.
We'll obviously look at ways to augment parking, and those sites were developed so that parking can easily be expanded. So, for example, the Park Avenue Park and Ride can have added levels added to it, and the Tacoma Park and Ride can be built with a parking structure in the midst of the circulation plan that exists there now.
We got another voicemail from a listener with a different theory for one of the reasons for lower ridership than initial forecasts. So let's have a listen.
My name is Sam Krause. I currently live in Gresham, Oregon. I lived for many years out in Clackamas area where the Orange Line was built. And I think the reason that there aren't thousands of people more than expected that riding the line is because there were so many Milwaukee businesses and citizens that were afraid of the potential crime that never happened. It's a bit of NIMBYism out there. They don't.
Well, that's a ridiculous question. Nobody doesn't ride light rail because of they're scared of the crime. That's how the anti-light rail people try to get people to vote no on it. And of course, it's ridiculous strategy, and it's been losing. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Let's see how Neil answers it.
Like Portland encroachment, and it kind of ruins economic prospects for people like me. So I personally moved out of Clackamas County into Multnomah County for a better job opportunity and better transit.
How much do you think he's right? That this is a cultural question that you have to convince people, in this case in Clackamas County, some of whom are skeptical of the whole idea of mass transit. You have to convince them to use the service that they don't have positive feelings towards.
I think there's no question that there's some of that, but I think what we have to do is respond with facts and data. And truthfully, over the last year, crime on the overall TriMet system is down 40%.
Do you find that
That's also very, very misleading. Those are, excuse me, that's crimes that are reported that fit in the certain categories, like theft and assault and things like that. Let me tell you, I spend quite a bit of time listening to the actual operations of the TriMet system, and while there's maybe not a 40% decrease in crimes, I'm not sure how they come up with that figure, but there sure is a lot of things that happen on the rail that certainly would kind of qualify, if harassment qualified as a crime, it would be up 200%, because there's all kinds of incidents involving harassment and fights and rowdy people on trains and DKs, etc., etc. None of that stuff gets reported in crime statistics, so that's kind of a misleading. This is a misleading figure. Another one, by the way.
Data works.
I do. And here's the other part of it, is that the City of Milwaukee police chief recently issued a report to his city council and said that the concern about crime simply did not materialize in the first round. So, to a large extent, those independent verifications of those numbers that I'm sharing with you, I think are really important to that conversation. But I do agree that this level of mass transit service is new to some of the areas like Oak Grove and Milwaukee, and some of the residents who've been there a long time probably have not figured out how to take advantage of it. So that's what marketing is all about, and our communication program with riders is really important in that regard.
Now, you mentioned that you'd like to let the federal government get them to let you use some savings to build some new parking lots. There are big questions now about what President-elect Trump is going to do in terms of infrastructure projects. He's said he wants to spend a lot more federal money on big projects. Do you get the sense that public transportation is on his list of priorities?
Well, I think we're all speculating a little bit, but what I can do is look backwards a little bit. And TriMet has been successful in gaining federal approval for these projects under Republican administrations as well as under Democratic administrations. When I started, Ronald Reagan was president at TriMet. So I think that we have demonstrated that we're a really good steward of federal funds, and that, if you want an example of first-class infrastructure in this region, look at the Tillicum Crossing. It's an incredibly effective piece of infrastructure that's also beautiful. And I think from what we know...
You mean the kind of thing Trump might want to put his name on?
I would hope so. And again...
Trump is not... Look, we don't know anything about Trump and public transportation. What we do know is the Republican platform, and it is definitely not about light rail. And as you can see, with Trump's appointees, they're all from the far right wing of the Republican Party. So realistically speaking, I would not be thinking that there's a whole bunch of money forthcoming from that group of people. I have my doubts just looking at the situation. Of course, I could be wrong, and I think Neil is intentionally downplaying that. Of course, he has to. He has to put everything in a positive light, and everything that he says and talks about has to be put in a positive light. That's very standard for these governmental technocrats. It's always rah rah. We're doing a great job. We've always done a great job. We'll continue doing a great job. Everything is perfect, and ignore anything negative. And so that's kind of where Neil is there.
We're able to develop that overall Orange Line project on time, on budget, under budget by about $50 million. And we were able to put 14,000 jobs into the economy here locally. And that's a lot of what he has been talking about during his campaign. So I'm hopeful that it is, but obviously speculation right now on all our parts.
The new direction, the new desired expansion on TriMet's part for light rail is the Southwest Corridor. Just last week, Tigard voters had the chance to maybe kill the project. It seems like out of about 25,000 ballots cast, the answer was yes by 130 or so votes. It's so close. Given how close it is, what does that tell you about the appetite for light rail in this region?
Well, I think it was very close, and by the way, our margin is now all the way up to 153 from. But nonetheless, I would say that it tells us that we have a lot of work to do with Tigard and Southwest Corridor residents. The work has really been to address what everyone knows are very serious congestion problems on Highway 217, on Highway I-5, through the Southwest communities. And it was interesting that our measure did pass, that was referred by Tigard City Council, or it seems to have passed. We'll know the final results in the end of this month. But gas taxes, for example, in a lot of local communities failed. So I think it does tell you that there is an open mind to mass transit as part of the solution, but we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we craft a project that's responsive to the city's citizens of Tigard and Tualatin and Southwest Portland, and as well as a lot of communication about why it's important to develop a standard, a standalone light rail alignment that actually is immune from the congestion they see every day on their roads.
Neil Mcfarlane, thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's Neil Mcfarlane, General Manager.
Okay, well, there you have. As you know, I'm not a particularly big light rail supporter. I've got nothing against light rail, and I was kind of on the fence about the Tigard measure. I mean, there's nothing wrong with bringing light rail to Tigard. I mean, why not, right? If you can do it, why not do it? If it's going to help, but you know, the experience has been that it doesn't really improve the services. It just changes people from bus to rail, and if you really look closely at that, it costs you spend billions of dollars and you save 10 minutes, 15 minutes during rush hours over the bus. And I know the bus is not cool and all of that, and Portland is all a hipster, gentrified place, and people won't take buses, you know, and so there's all that attitude. But I was on the fence about it. I figured, well, why not approve it, at least keep the option open. There's no reason not to approve the light rail plan now and see what they come up with and what their ideas are for funding this thing, which is a whole nother story. The last initiative that TriMet tried to float was for the purchase of buses, and it lost. And I was actually surprised about that. That bond lost. I mean, TriMet does have a bad reputation in this area, and you know, TriMet, the company, doesn't acknowledge that, of course, and they ignore. They're kind of like, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Democrats in this last election. They were like, ooh, everything's great, the country's great, we're already great, everybody's great, and, you know, unemployment is low, and la-di-da, la-di-da. And that was just a lie. It was just a lie. And people knew that it was a lie. Things are not good for a lot of people. And so you can't just focus on the positive and hopefully nobody will notice there's negative there. And I think that's part of the problem with TriMet is that they don't acknowledge the negatives. And they don't want to talk about them. They don't want to hear them. And they have their own agenda, that neoliberal agenda, which is to build out this system with rail. And that's for the developers. Let's get this clear. This is for the developers first and for the money second, because TriMet has this huge capital projects department. It's huge. It takes up $100 million last time I looked at it, or more than that. I don't remember offhand, but it's huge. And you have 50 people making six-figure salaries in that office, just thinking of ways, how are we going to keep our jobs? We need to get some referendums going here, and that's really what's happening there. You have a horde of technocrats trying to figure out how to keep their job, and for them to keep their job, they need to keep building the system. I don't personally think it's necessary. If there was a project that's necessary to build, it would be light rail to Vancouver. That's what needs to be done, but they have to figure out a way to get the people in Washington to agree to that. As you know, they wasted $250 million planning the CRC, and they got nothing. They spent $250 million, and they got nothing. But that $250 million went to all of these technocrats that are in these offices planning these things. And that's all they really care about, is how do we get this money? And you'll never hear that anywhere. Nobody talks about that. You have the truth is not told about these projects. It's carefully hidden. Mainstream media, of course, is completely useless for factual information. You're not going to get any factual information by mainstream media. And you know, I think that kind of ridership project, either they intentionally lied about it and they already knew that it was going to be low, or the Orange Line's a failure. If they actually thought that, I mean, they're supposed to conduct these surveys. And no, you know, they're supposed to make these projections, because that's how they get the grants, is they make these figures. And I just think they lied about the ridership myself.